with your technology, how do we balance the people that want to go direct to consumer, but also have broadcast rights deals? Is it an either or?
Yeah, no, I think they go together. And then also the other piece that's interesting now, and this is, I was going to say that we are going to show at NAB, is we've added broadcast feed distribution with over Transport Stream, which allows for providing in one stack the HLS streaming, the FAST channel, as well as the broadcast SRT. And that combines well for the modern way things are done globally right now. And I think in their case, she has a very sort of targeted idea about introducing new fast channels, which we can stream and serve with the ad insertion, et cetera. And I think she's interested in experimenting with all the way direct to consumer on her without the platform, which is what EPCR TV does. And so I think it's all together, basically.
I think for me, and you touched on it in your talk, which like I love the way you just kind of brought it all together, because you and I have seen this since 2 years ago, right? Or you've seen it for much longer. But for me, 2 years ago, of basically saying that you need to be able to process this thing as it's coming in to be able to serve all the needs that you have, whether it's AI training, for language detection, for event detection, all of that stuff. It needs to happen as it goes. And then you need to be able to distribute it.
Without having to make files and copy them somewhere and retranscode them and then move them again over to a CDN. And it's really interesting. I think everybody understands two basic points in the more legacy workflow. The one is egress costs when you're redistributing are really difficult to the point of unsustainable. This with those new file variants. The second thing that I think everybody understands is the time that it takes and the separate vendor workflows, et cetera. The complexity that comes into that, the associated costs. So the foundation of the fabric is that you basically have one object or one distribution, like a live distribution that is reused over and over again. And then for the inlineness of the data, that just happens on those live parts. So you can then process, index, label, and use a multimodal AI stack, as I was asked there in the talk, in line on the video as it's happening.
Right.
And then from there, that indexing data becomes your cue points for being able to then mix and match new content offerings. And then the fabric provides virtual play out or stitching of those into new compositions. So one of the new features that we're introducing that brings this all together is personalized compositions. The most obvious is personalized highlights coming off of a progressive VOD in a game, a live sports game. But it can be applied to channel composition, for example, and any kind of, if you will, data-driven, query-driven sort of new composition of the previous live or a set of content that you might want to make. And I think this is really the game changer for these workflows. And the most important thing at the bottom of this is that it's simpler and the cost of all the file-based infrastructure goes way down to fully away.
Right. And it's essentially, as it's coming in, it's become native to all the data flows that need to happen.
That's right.
And so just for people that are watching this that maybe don't understand the technology, to bring it together, it's if you're in fantasy sports, right, and you have your fantasy players of 20 players, or you're betting prop bets and you've got your 20 players, when you watch sports, you want to see those players. You want to see those plays. So if all of that content is sitting, let's say NFL, all of those NFL games are sitting in the fabric, then as it's coming through, I can build packages so that when I open up my DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever app and I want to see my highlights, it's the highlights of my teams, my players, the things that matter to me.
That's exactly
without moving any files, without doing anything.
Exactly. And then also I think it allows for this sort of adjunct, unlimited ecosystem to form around the live game. And one of the most interesting things about sports is that obviously the live game is the anchor, but then we have all of this, like, if I would say painful workflow to try to do stuff after that. First of all, get to the VOD. The very first thing we do simply for all of our live streaming in sports is create the progressive VOD and have it available to the consumer either at DVR rewatch of the live itself or the actual full rewatch immediately after the game. And literally it's minutes after the game onto the same site to watch. The second then is to get into what you would call the reconstitution of the game, right? And that's like match in 15, what we today call the highlights. That same process can be used to take reductions of the game. Again, data-driven with all the multimodality, the large model queries, et cetera. And then to have those pieces be editable in a tool that doesn't require, again, exporting files to be able for a human to say, yes, I'm blessed with the AI selected, or maybe I move the endpoints, or maybe I sub in a different clip, and then to publish that without having, again, a classical sort of, now I have to export the clips, I have to bring them into a transcoding system and stitch them all together and then push them out to the CDN. Instead, to just say, here's my timeline, here are the virtual clip points in that recorded live parts that I want in my composition, and then to publish that, which becomes just a virtual object pointing so that that's now playable. It's playable with no copies. That's the kind of workflow that's really game-changing to what sports has been doing. I assume it applies to other creative workflows as well. I think right now we're very focused on sports because there's an immediate need.
For sure. And it's empowering the storytellers, right? Instead of worrying about the technology of how do I move this? How do I get this? What's the resolution of all of these things?
Making it about the
telling
content.
the story. What's the story that I want to tell? And you make it super seamless. And then now you're talking about the things with personalization of graphics and sponsorships and zeros and the things that we do, right? Which is what we love.
And I wanted to mention there, so for Optikka, we're already doing this. This is the very demo that we are going to do together. All the HTML5 overlays, which are purpose-built in Optikka to the specific use case, those get transcoded in this dynamic playout. And that allows for then being able to mark up or put slates or any kind of decoration that you might want onto these personalized compositions. And the difference from the classical graphic workflows is that, again, you would typically have to have separate versions that are specifically transcoded with those overlays, or just apply client side, which doesn't scale very well, as we all know. The same principle applies to ad insertion and sponsorship content. And I think that's the next wave where we do know that it is very difficult right now for global live sporting events to monetize at scale because they've sold localized sponsorship for those streams, which in the old world is requiring a retranscoding and redistribution of all of those streams. So if you're, a big sports distributor like a DAZN, for example, and you're, you have a sponsor-driven personalization model for a very large event like a FIFA event, you really need technology like this in order to be able to scale that
You do, and especially in Europe, because they have so many different rights and so many different markets.
Many different markets. And one thing I was going to say, we've learned from all of our work with EPCR TV and rugby is that the international fan, the most important thing are the most basic localizations. Is the commentary in their language to start with? And then secondly, if there is sponsorship, does it make sense to where I am and something that I might be able to consume or act upon? And I do feel like that is one of the most basic, and we also heard in this panel, being able to translate the commentary automatically. But this componentized kind of approach is really favorable because the audio track is separate from the video, and any audio track can be selected and combined together, again, without retranscoding, without file-based distribution, without re-egressing everything or reloading the CDN,
And I think that is the most interesting, and you said this in the talk earlier, and we've talked about this before, that all of the layering of AI and all of the layering of technology is going to continue to get better, is going to continue to be opportunities to grow.
That's right.
The underlying change that enables all of this is the fabric and the way that you're processing files as they're coming in.
Yeah, that is true. And I think these sort of dynamic workflows really bring it to a head, and people can sort of viscerally see what we're talking about. So the big difference of the fabric for content distribution compared to the file-based workflows of, let's say, cloud stack plus CDN is that the fabric componentizes the media into the network. And it's not just the in-state media, it would be the media and the metadata and the code that can create all the derivatives. And that's unique to how it works. It also makes that addressable. So you can create global playout that's really timely off of the recombination of those parts over and again, and the data drives it. So when you put AI into this, everything is happening in place. So you're not waiting to get files extracted to go do the AI and then bring the results back. It also means you have vastly more flexibility in what you're able to do. And then finally, the practical problem holding back many of these AI workflows is the sheer cost. Without this kind of video infrastructure underneath, that it just costs too much per hour to do the kind of AI services, and it's holding back what everybody wants to do a lot.
Agreed. And I think
It's just,
when you spend the kind of money you spend for the live rights for these games, you need to grab as much revenue as you can. I mean, you need to maximize your revenue streams, and if you're not spending money on moving parts around and recasting all of
it all,
do more storytelling.
Yes,
do more connecting with you.
And you need, and also simplicity. I think the underlying thing that has just been really waiting on the industry is the fact that it's been so hard to do a lot of these sort of, let's call it upmarket kind of use cases. And now this becomes something that is provided more automatically and simply in the network, in the protocol. And it means the staff can be first of all, the load on the staff is so much less. The number of people needed is so much less. And then the focus point for the staff can be on the content and the fan experience rather than on just having to piece everything together and get every certification on earth to try to learn all of these technologies, which has been the way it was for the last 10 so years.
For sure.